neuroscience study that I just read in the Journal of Neuroscience. It was a study done in 2023, and what the researchers were seeking to do was to understand what centers of the brain are active when people are involved in what's called pro-social behaviors. Pro-social
Mm,
behaviors are anything that we do that actually benefits the community and the society at large, beyond just our individual relationships and people who we may feel obligated to do things for, or that there's some reciprocity and I take care of them, they take care of me. But how do we treat strangers? What are we
mm,
doing in the world to just, for people that we're not expecting a reward in return?
mm,
And what they did is they looked at when people give money and when people give time. And both are associated with, we get a certain reward, feel good about it, or there's something that happens. There are changes in the brain that happen with both when we engage in either giving charitable donations or donation of our time and our physical energy.
mm,
And what they found is that when we are engaged in volunteer work, like hands-on, giving our time to do something, there a lot more things light up in the brain, a lot more areas light up in the brain, especially those that relate to compassion, empathy, um, understanding other people, relational things, as well as how we process and understand emotional rewards for ourselves, right, from giving our time. When people give just money, there are also reward centers that are highlighted, but they're mostly the ones that are associated with cognitive and mentalizing, like understanding cognitively what I did and why this is right and why this aligns with what I'm supposed to be doing. And so it's a much more kind of intellectual exercise with financial, not to at all dismiss how valuable and important it
mm,
is for
mm,
people to donate and tithe, and especially people with wealth to really underwrite and fund all kinds of programs, build hospital wings and
mm.
fund education and the arts and all kinds of services. And something happens when we are personally involved in giving our time directly with
Mm.
people.
Welcome to the Wisdom We Share podcast, where ancient truths and modern intelligence weave together to inspire, ground, and shape us for a wiser, awakened life. I'm Anjani Amrit.
And I'm Robin Wald. And together we bring you fascinating conversations from the worlds of spirituality, science, and human behavior so you can connect to your own inner wisdom, joy, and clarity, elevating the way you actually live your life.
Today's episode of The Wisdom We Share is something quite special because something quite special is happening around the globe. This episode is part of something called Podcastathon, a global initiative where podcasters around the world are dedicating one episode of their show to a charity or non-profit that they really believe in, that they're behind. And the idea began really simply. Podcastathon was first launched in 2023 when a group of podcast leaders in Europe had a really simple but really powerful idea. What if a collective reach of podcasts could be used to amplify the work of charities and bring greater awareness to them? Rather than asking for donations directly, the idea was to use storytelling and conversation, the way podcasts use storytelling and conversation to shine a light on these organizations that do amazing, meaningful work. In the first year, they had, I think it was 300 podcasts that participated, mainly in French and French speaking podcasts. But over time, it grew. And this year, it's gone global. And Robin and I are super excited to be able to be part of this amazing movement. I mean, it's a main reason why we created this podcast in the first place. And so you're going to have thousands of podcasts from many, many countries all taking part. It's like the Olympic Games for podcasts, isn't it?
Except that we're not competing against each other. We're all
Exactly.
we're all putting out our
Yeah.
best effort, to bring more awareness and make the world a better place, make people more generous and in touch with how they might help benefit others.
Exactly. And just hearing stories about different charities that we would never get access to, we would never know about, shining a light on them. And, those addressing poverty, protecting the environment, mental health, empowering communities, caring for people, often the seen and unseen. And I think it's great that we can use media not just to entertain, but also to inform and to serve. And I think that's what Robin and I are going to be talking about today is service, selfless service or seva. So Robin, do you want to kick off with what that term means for you? Service, seva, charity.
Sure, sure. So I actually want to start, my upbringing and my religious practice, in addition to all my spiritual practice, comes from the Jewish faith. And in Judaism, there are some really important teachings about charity. There are a few different words for it. One is tzedek. Tzedek, the word tzedakah is meant to mean like giving financially and donating to different things, which is a type of service. But the root word of tzedakah, tzedek, is actually justice. So charity is directly linked to creating a more just world that is more equitable, where everybody has what they need and things are fair. So that's one type of service. Another word is chesed, and chesed is loving kindness and acts of generosity. And there's a beautiful teaching in Judaism that the world stands on three pillars, and without those three pillars, the world would not be able to continue to be in existence. One is on wisdom teachings and truth and the aspiration to understand God, consciousness in the world. One pillar is what's called avodah, which means service. It's the same as seva. It's devotional service, it's prayer service, it's giving from your heart to a divine cause. And the third pillar is what's called gemilut chasadim, which is acts of generosity and giving. So really, I think it's very similar to the teaching about what seva is, and I'm curious in your language to explain that to our listeners. But it's very foundational. It's very foundational. And there's also a tradition that a full 1/10 of everything you earn should be
Mm.
given back in charitable donations to others, right? It's not a hoarding mentality of I'm just going to acquire for myself. That if I'm blessed in my life with abundance, I'm always going to be putting some of that abundance back out into the world for the benefit of others.
Yes, that is exactly in alignment with the teaching that I've had in my life um, through a variety of Vedic, Vedantic, spiritual teachings, and it's called tithing, where you tithe 10% of your earnings, your income, to something charitable, something that you're passionate about and or your spiritual teacher or guru or master, the one that is giving you everything and helping you come to self-realization. And it's a massive theme for any of the great masters, any of the great yogi masters. They all talk about giving, forgiving, and serving, which is karma yoga. So tithing is actually it's regarded as a high level initiatory practice because it's only when our consciousness is at such a level that we can understand that doing that, tithing 10% of your income is actually the most selfish thing you can do because the rewards are 100,000-fold coming back to us. And so there's tithing. And, since I learned that, I've been tithing. I tithe to various charities. And I love it when I do my taxes at the end of the year and I see the amount that's gone to charities. And I'm like, yes, this is so good. It makes me feel so good about what I'm doing in the world. And then I wanted to ask you about, is it mitzvah, a mitzvah? Because we had here in Sydney the shootings in Bondi, the
Yes.
attacks on the Jewish community. And the Jewish community sent out this invitation to anyone to offer a mitzvah or perform a mitzvah. So, can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because that was really inspiring for me.
Yeah, a mitzvah is generally translated as a good deed, but actually the real root of it is the word tzav, which is a commandment. So in the Torah, which is the sacred text, um, which Christians will refer to as the Old Testament, but the five books of Moses, there are 613 commandments. Some of them are positive commandments of things that when we engage in them, they elevate us and the world and our behavior, and they're based in our values and in acts of kindness, like feeding the poor and leaving the corner of your field, so that someone can come and glean who's hungry, or taking care of the orphan and the widow, taking care of somebody how you take care of and guard somebody's body who's died and prepare them for burial. There are all kinds of positive commandments that we do, which are called mitzvot. Visiting the ill is a mitzvah, right? So, and then there are negative commandments, which are the things that we are supposed to avoid doing. So it's almost like the yamas and the niyamas in
Yes.
yoga,
Yeah.
right? Right? Or if you think about the Ten Commandments, there are ones that you shall honor your mother and your father, but you shall not kill, right?
Mm,
So there's positive, it's just stated in the affirmative or the negative.
mm,
But in general, a mitzvah is an opportunity to elevate yourself on a soul level through the way you behave in the world, because it's about what we do. And it's not just about what you learn intellectually and what you think about and theorize. It's about the action. How do you take those values and those teachings and put it into action in the world? So mitzvot, the plural of mitzvah, is very much about how we act in the world.
mm. Isn't it wonderful? It just those pillars, they are the pillars that if imagine if everyone grew up with those pillars, I'm not talking about you don't have to be religious or anything, but just grew up with those kinds of pillars for life, how different the world would be. In yogic traditions, I know like Neem Karoli Baba, he talked about, many people came to him, many Westerners came to him wanting enlightenment and what can I do and how can I serve and how can I get all these mystical experiences. And he always would give very simple instructions, feed people, tell the
Yes.
truth, care for others. And I think I remember listening to Ram Dass, and he talks a lot about his time with his guru, and he was saying, what one of the students asked, like, why does service matter so much? And Neem Karoli Baba said that love everyone, serve everyone, and remember God, because that's how you get to enlightenment. And so that is also the same teaching. It's like you get to enlightenment, self-realization, the thing that we're all moving to, whether we're consciously or not conscious of it, is that place where we understand we're not separate, we are all one. And by engaging in acts of service and doing charitable work and getting involved, it brings a sense of connection to the larger part of us so we can understand we're not these isolated bodies behind a screen tap, tap, tapping. We actually feel a lot of deep connection and sense of belonging and a sense of joy and fulfillment when we're engaging in acts of service.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you were speaking, it was making me think of a neuroscience study that I just read in the Journal of Neuroscience. It was a study done in 2023, and what the researchers were seeking to do was to understand what centers of the brain are active when people are involved in what's called pro-social behaviors. Pro-social
Mm,
behaviors are anything that we do that actually benefits the community and the society at large, beyond just our individual relationships and people who we may feel obligated to do things for, or that there's some reciprocity and I take care of them, they take care of me. But how do we treat strangers? What are we
mm,
doing in the world to just, for people that we're not expecting a reward in return?
mm,
And what they did is they looked at when people give money and when people give time. And both are associated with, we get a certain reward, feel good about it, or there's something that happens. There are changes in the brain that happen with both when we engage in either giving charitable donations or donation of our time and our physical energy.
Mm.
And what they found is that when we are engaged in volunteer work, like hands-on, giving our time to do something, there a lot more things light up in the brain, a lot more areas light up in the brain, especially those that relate to compassion, empathy, um, understanding other people, relational things, as well as how we process and understand emotional rewards for ourselves, right, from giving our time. When people give just money, there are also reward centers that are highlighted, but they're mostly the ones that are associated with cognitive and mentalizing, like understanding cognitively what I did and why this is right and why this aligns with what I'm supposed to be doing. And so it's a much more kind of intellectual exercise with financial, not to at all dismiss how valuable and important it
Mm.
is for
Mm.
people to donate and tithe, and especially people with wealth to really underwrite and fund all kinds of programs, build hospital wings and
Mm.
fund education and the arts and all kinds of services. And something happens when we are personally involved in giving our time directly with
Mm.
people. So it's
Yeah.
it's both. And I'll just add that there's one other in Jewish teaching.
Mm.
They distinguish three types of service. One is with money, one is with your time and physical energy,
Mm.
and the third is with your wisdom. So
Mm.
this is a whole other level of service that is understood that if you have wisdom, there's like a higher responsibility and obligation to share that and to teach. And that's another type of generosity and service that you can put into the world.
Yeah, that's exactly the same in yogic traditions as well. It's yes, tithing is giving of your money, and there's seva where you give of your energy and you're involved, your hands are in the cake, so to speak. And then there is the responsibility. If you To those whom much is given, much is expected. And there is an expectation that you then share your wisdom with community. And, just like Jesus did, he shared his wisdom with community and he had his disciples and he had his flock and, he brought them along in terms of wisdom teachings. And so it's the same I see in all traditions and all religions. It's this sharing, it's giving, and it's being involved and connecting. So isn't that wonderful that you've got these different aspects,
Yeah.
different philosophies and ways of life. They're all saying the same thing. And I love that. I really love that.
Yeah. I think it speaks to that as human beings, there's a universality,
Mm.
to
Mm.
on a soul level, what we understand is part of our design as human beings. That
Yeah.
it's not only egoic and about our own survival and our own wants and needs, that
Mm.
we inherently understand that to be involved in community and to give what we have available according to our skills, abilities,
Mm.
finances, that
Mm.
when we give, it really does elevate us and keep us well, actually. I mean,
Yes.
I know that there must be tons of studies about associating wellness, happiness, joy with giving versus, the whole like, A Christmas Carol and Scrooge and those who just like, I'm gonna be stingy and hoard and it's only for me, me, me. Those aren't particularly happy people, I would guess. I don't have the neuroscience to quote on that.
I do. I'm going to find it. But yes, you're absolutely right. It does improve our health and well-being, our mental well-being. And there's a lot of neuroscience around that. So you can actually, our listeners can look it up, but it does directly positively impact our health and well-being. And I wanted to say, before we start talking about the charities that you and I want to highlight in this podcastathon, it's important for everyone to understand something that often we kind of don't put two and two together. And that is that engaging in acts of service. Often we think, well, I'll get successful. When my business is successful, I'll put some money in. I'll donate something. Or when I've completed what I need to do in my career, then I'll go and help. And it's the other way around. The teachings, the yogic teachings say we help others on the way in order for us to have the kind of health and success and well-being and ultimately a sense of enlightenment, because those actions of charity are a main ingredient in the recipe for self-realization, self-enlightenment. And so it's almost like engaging charitable actions now, because that's the very thing that we need in order to better our life. And the law of karma, if you believe in it, if you don't believe in it, it doesn't matter, because what goes around comes around is the same thing. If we do good, we get good. And so if we want a better life, then do good for others, do good for more than just your immediate circle, but reaching out, like you said, and helping people who you never would have got contact with. And I've got a story to share about that. But first, let's ask you, what is the charity that you want to highlight in this podcastathon, and why? What does it mean to you, and what does it do?
Sure. So there's an organization in Westchester County in New York, where I live, where I have lived for many years, called My Sister's Place.
Mm,
And this started in the 1970s. It's actually their 50th anniversary this year. And it started as the Yonkers Women's Task Force. And it was just a group of women who were trying to help other women and create safe shelter for women who were experiencing domestic violence and abuse. And so they were doing whatever they could just to have a space for women to come and be with other women and get support and try to problem solve and figure out how they could get the help they needed to get free from a very dangerous situation. That evolved into a shelter in Yonkers, which I got involved in when I first moved up to Yonkers. I was 21 years old, and
mm,
I was looking for a place to give of my time and energy that mattered to me.
mm,
And I kind of searched what organizations are in Yonkers, and I found this shelter, My Sister's Place, and I asked if I could volunteer there. And I was mentored by this incredible woman, Helen, who was a wise woman who was one of the founders
mm,
of My Sister's Place back in the day. And she taught me all about domestic violence and what that looks like and how and where it exists and debunking myths around it and what women and children need when they're escaping that type of violence, what
mm,
they need emotionally, physically for security, what they needed legally, what
mm,
they need to rebuild their lives, how to connect them to financial resources, to other services. Um, my sister's place has grown over the years to having a second shelter location, but a big part of what they do is legal advocacy. So they have a legal center where they take on women's cases, and fight for them to get legal rights, to get benefits, to get housing, to bring the perpetrators to justice, to get custody of their children. One of the biggest things I learned when I worked in the shelter for 3 years as a volunteer, and I've always loved kids. You know that about me. So I would play with the kids and I
mm,
would lead yoga classes for the moms.
mm,
But I mostly, and I would do hotline phone calls, like, answering the phone and doing intakes and seeing if we had beds available and how many children do you have, and sending police to get them and escort them and bring them to, safely and all that kind of thing. Um, but one of the things I learned is that really these women just needed a place to land and feel someone was going to give them the space and the time
mm,
to sort of, and take care of their children, right? Like that they had a place where their children would be safe. What I was going to say is that very often abusers would use the children against the women as a bargaining chip. I remember one story. There was a woman who came to us whose husband was a diplomat. So he had diplomatic immunity and he could not be brought to justice. And he was abusing her terribly. And they had 6 children. And when she wanted to leave and wanted to come to shelter, he basically used the children as pawns to get her to come back over and over and over again because he wouldn't release or give the children their freedom for her to get free. And so a lot of advocacy around that kind of thing. My sister's place also does educational programs in high schools, talking to young men and women about love and relationships and that love shouldn't hurt and what are healthy relationship patterns and what are unhealthy relationship flags and how do you understand that for yourself to choose healthy relationships or to do peer support when you see your friends in really toxic or abusive relationships. They also do skills training because very often a big part of why women can't get free is because they're not earning money independently and their partner is controlling the finances and they haven't had the skills or the resources to be able to support themselves. So giving women skills training where they can then go out and get a job and be able to live independently and be self-sufficient is really critical. So anyway, it's an organization that's near and dear to my heart. I served on the board of directors for 15 years after volunteering in the shelter. So I was involved in a lot of behind the scenes, fundraising and decision making and what direction the organization was going to go in. And I haven't been directly involved with them for years, but I give to them every year because their mission is really, sadly, still needed very much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I grew up in a family of domestic violence, so, and I can tell you now, there was nothing like that where I grew up. And there still isn't anything like that where I grew up. It's just part of the fabric and it's an accepted norm, unfortunately. And it's something that as children you never quite recover from. It's something that just slightly leaves you off center, off kilter. And so I think it's amazing that there are, and I know there are a lot of great charities that are doing that work and helping women. And I offer mentoring services to free programs and scholarships for women from domestic violent family backgrounds because to me it's a massive thing for me to give back and do that. And the biggest thing I see is the levels of shame that are just held in the body, held in the consciousness, and to help people just let that go, help the women let that go, because women are the glue of this society. And when women are persecuted and traumatized like that, it just keeps going generation, generation, generation. So, one more time, what's the charity called?
It's called My Sister's Place,
Mm,
and I think their headquarters are in White Plains, New York.
mm.
Yeah, but
Right.
you could find them online in Westchester County, New York.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Amazing.
yeah. So what's the charitable organization that you chose to speak about and highlight?
This was really hard for me because I have so many, but
Hmm.
I landed on one that's kind of it's doing quite a lot, and then I've got a couple of cheeky mentions as well. Um, I am very passionate about Mother Earth and tending to her and helping her and women and animals. So they're my kind of three buckets or baskets. So Green Shakti is a charity that I am involved in, that I raise awareness for, that I fundraise for, my business does. And it's based in Tamil Nadu in India. It's actually a charity founded by my guru, Sri Shakti Amma Narayani, and it has multiple projects. So Amma started with just a village that had one dirt road in it, and she built temples and hospitals and schools and you name it. So the projects are reforestation, so they're planting 5 million trees, and there's an ongoing planting initiative that we raise funds for. There's women's empowerment that specifically help women get jobs, so from domestic family backgrounds to have job, to have work, that they can then they're sewing clothing that gets sold in the ashram, and the money gets then given to them so they can earn money and recover their sense of self, in doing that. There's a medicinal forest, so they're growing all these medicinal herbs. They have food forests, and they donate food to remote villages who don't have much, or their crops don't, they're not, their crops die because they don't have much rain. They feed thousands of people every day that go to this ashram. They do tree donations. They also have Ex Nora, which is a zero waste production facility. So they recycle everything, and I mean everything. And then the thing that excites me most is they have an animal and wildlife protection program. So protecting wildlife, educating the locals about animals and wildlife. There's a lot of street dogs. So we're at the moment building a vet clinic, and we're looking for funding around that as well, to build a permanent vet clinic in the village to serve all the street dogs and the wild animals as well. So it's very dear to my heart. It's an incredible charity. They're doing so much, and there's a huge community of people who go to the ashram. So it's, getting as many people involved as possible, hands-on, actually planting the trees, going to
Mm,
the schools and offering teaching to the school. The kids, they love it. When they see us, they're like, oh, they go nuts. The kids, they're so cute. So there's so many parts of this that benefit. Then the best thing is it benefits not just India, but all the world. All this, the reforestation, for example, is benefiting every single human being on the planet. And so that's why I'm really involved in it, donate to it, and get involved in the programs as well, and bring people there and get them involved in the programs. I had a client yesterday, and she had a reward, a cash reward. She'd earned a cash reward for a referral, and she said, oh, don't give me the cash, donate it to Green Shakti. And I was like, yes. That teaching of that wisdom and sharing that wisdom of seva and
right.
how it benefits us, was such a fulfilling moment for me. So I want to make a couple of cheeky mentions as well, because I am
Sure.
very passionate about animals. The Orangutan Project,
Hmm.
Voiceless, and Animals Australia. They're all doing amazing work protecting animals. The Orangutan Project in Borneo, protecting these beautiful orangutans who are just getting murdered and
Mm,
slaughtered and used and abused. Voiceless, which is changing, they change, though they work towards changing legislation, as do Animals Australia. And I volunteered for Voiceless for a long time, as a young lawyer, and just loved the approach that they have to animals and educating people and bringing awareness around how food gets from farm to fork, about, industrialization of meat production and how just horrendous it is. And if people were aware of how meat got to the shelves, they would not eat it. And so there's that, and there's no judgment about people who have meat, but just be aware, have an
right.
awareness on how
Ethical.
it,
Right. Because there
yeah,
are ethical
ethical.
ways
There are many
to,
ethical ways to
yes.
eat meat,
Yeah.
many
There are
ethical ways.
small farms who are not
Yes,
engaging in cruel
exactly.
practices. And yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. So it's not,
Yeah.
it's about awareness, raising awareness
Mm,
so that we make more and better informed choices.
amazing. So many great charities, and we could
Mm,
go on and on and
we
on
could.
and talk about other things that are near and dear to our heart, and where we also have donated our time and our energy as well as our money. But I'm really curious for listeners, if you are listening to this and in your mind and heart, you're aware of the charities that you love, or the places and people or animals to which you donate your time and energy, we would love to hear about that. Definitely leave us comments in this show, and, or on the YouTube, and leave us comments or reach out to us, because we want to know how you're living your values out in the world and what you're giving to make the world a better place. We know that you're involved in that work as well.
Yeah, and we'd really love to hear from you. So it's biologically nourishing to share these stories. And if you have a podcast and you didn't know about Podcastathon, then you can join next year. So spreading that good word as well, because initiatives like Podcastathon are so meaningful. They remind us that something as simple as a podcast episode can be used as a vehicle for service. There are opportunities to serve wherever we go. And so we hope that our little part that we're playing today will contribute towards something bigger than us. And I don't know about you, Robin, but I just feel really grateful that we're aware of it and we can become part of it.
Absolutely. And I feel inspired by hearing about the work that your charity is doing. And, it just, we need reminders,
Mm,
because we're human, our lives are busy, and, we have a lot of day-to-day things that are mundane that we have to attend to.
mm,
And we need reminders of who we are at our very core, our truest self, so that we can elevate and bring that to the surface again and again and again. So
mm,
even hearing, you speak about why you love to do service and what kinds of service, like you were speaking about animals, and I've I was an activist on, when I was younger, like going to all kinds of like hands-on demonstration, protest, like for animals, and then giving of time and money or adopting animals from a shelter. And,
mm,
and it's just, we need to remember those parts of
mm,
ourselves.
mm,
Yeah. Yeah.
mm. I
Really
think
important.
I think
Thank you.
that's a great point. I think we end on that let's remind ourselves, not be judgy about ourselves, but just take this as a lovely reminder that, oh yeah, there is that part of life as well, and possibly re-engage if you're already, and if not, get onto something that you can engage with, and let it fill your heart. So with that, I think we'll sign off, and this is the wisdom we share. Thanks, Robin.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Wisdom We Share podcast. We hope today's episode sparked some new insight, imagination, and practical tools you can integrate into your daily life.
Continue this journey with us by subscribing, sharing, and dropping us a review. Until next time, stay wise.